hopefully, thanks for that. Thank you. So the meeting is being recorded. So to the extent anybody who is unable to attend, I will circulate the recording after. So thanks again for being here. And Christy Bennett will speak very quickly about the 2022 championship season. She just went through her first year of 2021, which was a very, very busy season, and we were just very happy to be able to hold it. And maybe she can tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll pass it off to John Pagano for General Connecticut Board interim.
Yes, hi everybody, and thank you, and welcome again. 2022 is here. I'm so excited. I'm a little surprised it's here this quickly, but the summer did go by very quickly. And the championships this year went really well. Thank you all for participating in the leagues and in the championships and everything else. I think it was a great way to come back and a great way to kind of get me started. A couple of things about the championship season. We should have the calendar for 2022 out by the end of September. The championship subcommittee, which is made up of a few members of the section league committee, which are your state league chairs across the section, and then some other volunteers from around the section, are helping with locations, dates, times. So hopefully we will have that by the end of September. As soon as I get it and it's approved by the section league committee, we'll get it out to all the local league coordinators, and they can get it out to you so that you know exactly where things are going to be and what dates and times. And because this year we were very, very lax with our COVID, some of our COVID issues, for people who had teams, if they pulled out at the last minute or with default, we didn't do any penalties at all. We refunded money for those teams. We did a lot of just trying to understand that people had very thin lineups, and it was kind of a rough season for everybody. The section league committee, though, has decided that for the 2022 season, the championship regulations that put in possible sanctions and financial penalties for defaults in the championship itself will be back. So that is, and it's written in regulations. It's been in the regulations for a lot of years. We just kind of suspended it for this year. So just know that that's going to be the case in the future. We're going to be pretty strict about that. National has not made any mention at all of the player eligibility that they reduced this year to 2 times. They will go back to their the original regulations. Those laxed regulations for player eligibility were for 2021 only. So hopefully we won't have big 10-week breaks where you aren't able to play for 10 weeks, and we can run the seasons as they're supposed to be and be a little bit back to normal. But as we go, if we have any updates on that, we'll make sure that you know as soon as we know, so that you can adjust your play and your lineups accordingly. So that's really it for me for the championships, unless anybody has any questions, and or if you have any questions later on, throw them in the chat and we'll answer them the best we can.
Thank you, Christy. And just to kind of follow up on that, some of you who had questions about kind of what our leagues are looking like in the spring, as soon as we have the championship calendar, we'll be able to map out the dates for the spring league. So those of you who play 55 and over, 65 and over, mixed 40 and over, or men's 18 and over, once we have those dates, we'll just have to kind of work backwards from that to ensure we have the dates for the spring leagues, and we'll be able to add to the timeline that I circulated earlier. So, and thanks to those who volunteered at the championship events this summer. It really went really well. So we were able to get through this without any incident. So thank you for that. John, did you want to jump in real quick on the?
Sure. So thank you, everybody. Welcome. Looking forward to a great season. That's amazing, is that Christy mentioned how quickly it comes on from last year to this year. So just a quick overview. I'm the chair of the Connecticut State USTA League Committee. We oversee effectively Southern Connecticut, Eastern, and Northern. And our general goal is to promote tennis. We're trying to promote more leagues, more initiatives in alignment with Connecticut and New England. In other words, when Christy mentions the section, we are the New England section. So all of the states in there, we try to promote ourselves, obviously, and then work together to make sure we're continuing to grow tennis in the area. That being said, definitely get out and participate. As I mentioned, Andrew, who's going to be presenting a little bit later, is one of the members of the committee, and he has an important role in the regulations. He's going to go through everything, some new updates on that with the tri-level and with just any updates. So if anybody's interested in participating or sharing or definitely giving me feedback, my email is listed. So anything, again, that you think would help promote tennis in, whether it's Southern Connecticut, Eastern or Northern, anywhere you play, definitely let me know. I'd like to hear it. And with that, I'm going to bring it back to Susanna.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the agenda was circulated, so we're just following kind of the general sequences as we outlined there. Just a bit of housekeeping. I reached out to some of you, I want to say maybe about 30 or so captains who have Optimum Online email addresses. For some reason, Optimum doesn't like mass distributions of email. I'm getting a lot of undeliverables, and I've heard that other places have struggled with that. So for those of you who came back to me with new emails, thank you. Others are telling me that you're receiving my emails fine. So let's just hope this works. But if I typically send out maybe one email a week. So if I'm silent for too long, you're probably not getting my email. So just reach out to me, and I'll let you know if you're missing out on anything. One thing that just went out about a week ago was the survey for the adult men and women 18 and over summer format. I certainly experienced this as captain in the last few years, and having my captains reach out to me and just tell me just how frustrating it is to have the format of 2 singles, 3 doubles in the summer season. The summer season in Southern Connecticut specifically is very short. A lot of people have vacation plans, and with COVID especially, it was really very, very difficult to field all those lines. And I've certainly seen it on my end where we really had a lot of forfeits in that second singles line. So what we wanted to do was just to send out a survey just to see, is this really an overwhelming is there an overwhelming desire to change the format? And again, for local play purposes, we can do whatever format we want, understanding that if you do move on to championships for adult 18 and over, the national format and hence the district and sectional format is currently still 2 singles, 3 doubles. So understanding that. So as results come in, hopefully over the next week or so, we'll compile the results and just see. And again, on my end, I'm not. I'm curious to see how it shakes out, and if the answer is different for women than it is for men, I think we'll discuss it internally and decide what we want to do for the spring. But we just want to hear what you think, and if we don't want captains getting frustrated that they just can't recruit that college singles player who's back home who's crushing the season, and we really want you to be a little more satisfied with running the league in a very, very busy summer. So thank you for submitting that. If you didn't submit it, please do so. If you don't have the link, let me know and I'll send it to you. We'd love to hear your voice. A quick thing, I'm getting a lot of questions and emails about ratings calculations. So as you know, USTA National did suspend the ratings calculation at the end of 2020. So we're now going on year 2. Certainly created quite a bit of noise on a player end, on a captain end, teams competing against each other, underrated players. So the ratings refresh is on plan as it typically is. So at the end of October, after the national tournaments are completed, that will be stopped. So the ratings will be frozen, and they'll use the month of November to do the recalculations. And typically they get published on or around December 1st. So like around Thanksgiving time, or maybe a little after. So hopefully that'll really get rid of some of the noise that we still have in a system for the last 2 years of no ratings. And, but just on the captain's end, as you're planning your teams, I'm sure you generally probably have a pretty good idea of who will likely move up. So just plan your rosters accordingly. As players move up, obviously they won't be able to play at their current level, but make sure you have kind of your pipeline of players to make sure that your teams are not left in a bind. So that's on the NTRP front. So that's on schedule. We're happy to report that as of now, COVID waivers are not required. And if anything comes up, we will let you know. Again, at the time, for all your players who did complete this last year, there's really no expiration date on this. So certainly the ones who did it, those are covered, and we're not requiring them of the new players. And, you know, as Delta kind of changes things around, we may come back to it if this is something that's required by the section, but you don't have to worry about that. So thank you. Just keep signing up your players for the upcoming leagues as you normally would without worrying about this. And related to that, getting some questions about, well, what's the protocol on post-match socialization? We're really leaving this up to the clubs. And, you know, what happened in championships, for example, is a really good guide of this, where, you know, some people were allowed to stay and watch, and different clubs will have their own, you know, I believe by now most of them either have masking required of everyone, you know, regardless of vaccination. Some clubs are actually requiring you to provide proof of vaccination. So whatever your club's policy is, you know, obviously you'll have to abide by that. And, you know, if the club's allowing post-match socializing, you know, that's great, and you're comfortable with it, the visiting team's comfortable with it. Just make sure you're communicating with each other and everybody knows what to expect, and understanding that, you know, if it gets too rowdy or too crowded, the club may just ask you, you know, to disband. But so far we haven't had any issues. So I think some of this is already starting to go on, but we, you know, again, whatever the local club policy is, and the state, obviously, as we hear more developments on that, we'll just have to guide that. I think we've gotten some really good responses in the last 2 years. We've been using the easy reference sheet, and I think that's proving to be very helpful. So thank you, Andrew, for helping us put that together. We even had our neighboring section in Eastern, so New York really liked it, so they're using some version of it as well. So I think it's a really good, handy way of really distilling, you know, 90% of what you'll need on the court. So that is always available on our website. So it's printable. You can print it double-sided and fold it and keep it. And what a lot of clubs do, which is great, is my home club has it printed and laminated. So they keep 6 copies at the front desk. So anytime there is a home match, you know, each court gets a copy of it, so that there's really no confusion about, well, you know, somebody twisted her ankle, how long is the medical timeout? Or, you know, how long between points, how long between games and sets, and what the timeout rule really being one of the most questioned items is what happens if we're about to time out. As you know, a 2-hour timed match is our standard format. So that's really it. And again, we will continue to use our website. We're down one person in USTA New England Marketing. So if we're late posting anything, it's really because we're just, we have a little HR shortfall. So until then, you know, I'm here if there's anything you need. We have all the deadlines for the upcoming leagues. We have the tri-level that just closed, and we'll be working on the schedules, and so please roster your players. For the Women's Day League 18 and over, that's closed as well. So that will start running on September 20th. And those of you who are looking to have a 40 and over team or a mixed 18 and over team, registration is open until September 6th. So we have until September 6th for you to submit your form. If you have any questions about formats, you know, how we do flights, how many matches you're looking at, you know, that's, you know, feel free to ask me. I'm trying to really mix it up as much as possible in case, you know, you're curious as to how we do this. The flights really are the toughest part of this is really determining who plays where. And we generally find that, you know, geography really comes first, and people don't really like to travel too much. But to the extent you can, you know, it'd be really great to mix up the teams so that you're not playing the same teams over and over again. But, you know, understanding that the tricky thing is in Southern Connecticut, 80% of our teams are kind of south of Westport, Wilton line. So really a lot of it is pretty heavily concentrated in the mid to southern part of Southern Connecticut. So, you'd see really a lot of concentration that way geographically. So, you know, the northern bit of our local area, we don't really have that many teams. So unfortunately, and it kills me, but very often a lot of the northern teams, they end up playing each other over and over again. But I try to mix that up as much as possible. So just be patient with me on that. One interesting thing we're running this season is a combo women's 5-5 league. It's a non-advancing league, and it's running from September to December, and it's a new format where beginner players, women's 2-5 players can pair up with a 3-0 player in a doubles format. It's non-advancing, no impact on ratings, so we really try to encourage some new players. So we have a really pretty nice turnout. It'll give our 2-5 players something to do in the fall until the ratings come out and our 2-5 season begins in January. So that's what we have going on. And I'm just reading a quick note before I forget in the chat, so if you don't mind. Easy reference sheet, Nicole. It's on our website, on the Southern Connecticut website. It's I can send you the link. There is it's really a document that lists the rules of the court, the rules of a match, of a league match, so you can actually go through and, it'll just say, okay, here's the warm up is 10 minutes and includes serves, how you change, how you score, what the timeout rules are. It's really very, very handy. And I'll send that to you and Teresa. Just make a note of it. So
a link in the chat too, if they want to grab it there. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. So fantastic. So Christy already did that. Thank you. From Beth, I saw more injuries in retired courts at districts than ever before. The majority were singles players who were cramping. I have to believe it was due to dehydration brought on by extremely hot courts that had no AC or ventilation. I'm wondering if you could take that into consideration in reviewing clubs to use for postseason tournaments. I think in Northern Connecticut, I don't think any of the clubs are air conditioned, but maybe Christy, if you wanted to comment on championships, maybe.
So we actually, I only know of 2 clubs in Eastern Mass that have air conditioning. And if we're going to continue to play indoors, which seems to be what the committees are leaning towards, then we're just going to have to keep people hydrated and do a good job and do the best that we can to keep everybody cool. We can't in any way, obviously, pressure clubs to get air conditioning. It's just not something USTA can do. And, we try to look for the clubs with the most number of courts that are the most convenient for hotels so that players have the best experience when it comes to the overall weekend. But I can definitely bring the suggestion and comment to our committee and let them know that that's definitely a consideration for everybody. Yeah, I can definitely talk to them about adding fans. I know in one of the clubs in Eastern Mass, we had opened the doors and for some reason it made the courts really slippery. And so that was a concern as well. So we might need to do a little more digging into how to keep that from happening as well.
Thank you. I think we're pretty spoiled in Southern Connecticut. I think we have quite a bit of air conditioning in our club, so I get it. Okay. So if we don't have any more comments at this point, Christy, did you want to just quickly go over COVID? I think that's next on our agenda, if you don't mind.
Yes. So I feel, very much like everybody's. So we've kind of gotten into this groove with COVID and the restrictions and the regulations and everything else. So it's the same thing that we've been saying from the beginning. Local and state government guidelines will mandate. If a club has stricter regulations or stricter policies, we go by that. The whole thing is just communication. We already do have one club that is in the Berkshires in Western Mass that's requiring proof of vaccination. So I don't know if that's going to be trending. I haven't heard any rumors from any place else other than that one specific place. So that being said, as things change, if the Delta variant gets worse, we will communicate with you as quickly as we can, but please over communicate with each other when it comes to, if your club happens to change a policy or have a really strict policy, make sure the visiting teams know ahead of time. I would do it, if you call them, that's great, but I would also follow up via email, CC Susanna on it so that we all have some kind of a paper trail as well. And so just do your best to communicate. And if you have any questions, shoot Susanna an email so that we can address them as quickly as possible. Somebody asked about when the match schedule is posted, is it possible to specify which clubs have clay versus hard court? Oh, that's not a me question. That's a Susanna question.
Sure. I mean, it's really overwhelmingly hard court. I mean, Four Seasons, Weston Racket. Trying to think if there's anybody else. Those are the two that I can think of that have hard true. Can you think of it?
GTA.
Old Greenwich. Okay.
And also the country clubs that bubble in the winter.
So who would that be? I'm trying to think.
Ennis and Greenwich Country Club.
Yeah, I don't play that far south. Okay. Greenwich Country Club. Okay. Greenwich Country
That's also something you guys as captains, if you know that if you captain a courts that are clay, make sure that the other team knows that they're going to be coming to you on clay courts. That would be a good communication piece between the two of you. Like I said, over communicating at this point, I think is going to be the key as we move in as we've learned with COVID.
Yeah. So for example, we do that. Some clubs in the summer, they may require white clothing and even white shoes. So that's something that, captains, to the extent your clubs have specific requirements, that's something that, as you're doing the week before confirmation of your match with your opposing captain, that's something to do. But typically, I mean, clay versus hard true versus hard court is really, I've never had that come up that, it's just, you get what you get. So you play whatever they have. So echoing the sentiment from Craig, played outside of Springfield, Mass at a local high school and didn't have access to bathrooms, 2 porta potties for several hundred women. Not ideal in 90-degree heat. Yeah, Craig's comment was maybe we can have it in Southern Connecticut next. My understanding is that we alternate, and I haven't been with USTA long enough, especially with COVID, but we had the championships, we had districts in Southern Connecticut 2 years ago. But are you referring to beyond? Are you referring to sectionals? Was that the comment? I think that would really just follow, because USTA New England is based in Massachusetts. Presumably, that's really where I foresee that the sectionals and other big championships will be. Would you say that's accurate, Christy?
I think that in the past it has been a very, I think that it has been kind of a one decision shot on where we have championships. And so this year the subcommittee is going to have a really heavy hand in where they're played and what locations. Staff will have a little bit of input in that, but we want to make sure, that's why we've been sending out surveys after every championship to make sure that we hear from captains about the experience. I know what you're talking about with the Springfield, Mass location, and it was problematic and something that we will address if we use that location in the future. But that subcommittee will make a majority of the decisions as where things are. And I know one of the things that they definitely wanted to address was rotating where the championships are. So as soon as we know, we will let you guys know.
Christy, that has always been an issue for a lot of people, and I know that several captains have brought that issue up in the past at captains meetings because of the inequity of it, because we always have to travel and we always have to spend money, and yet usually half of the teams that end up in the finals are from Southern Connecticut, and it's like, why don't we get the chance to host one of those events?
Part of the reason is the clubs won't agree to what we pay.
Okay.
And it's not even close. They charge an exorbitant amount, and we just can't afford some of the Southern Connecticut clubs. So, like I said, we'll do our best to kind of move it around. I've only been in this position it'll be a year tomorrow. So I've only ever seen the championships this year other than when I've played once in a while, which was very rare. So I will do my best to let them know that changing location is of utmost priority and see if I can push the subcommittee that direction.
Yeah, I mean, that was my understanding as well, that economics is a factor. I mean, even match fees, if you go up, obviously farther north into New England, I mean, there are places where players pay $15 for a match. I mean, in Connecticut, that would be unheard of. So.
There's a question in the chat, Susanna, about if one court is postponed from a match, should we email Susanna with the rescheduled date? And same question for the entire match is rescheduled. So how?
If the entire match is rescheduled, yes, please email me and let me know. If you've played the majority of courts and some are unplayed, one court, Tennis Link does not have the functionality of having 2 different dates for one match. So it'd be nice as an FYI, but you don't really have to, as long as you worked it out amongst yourselves. But if it's an entire match that's sitting on the books, not having been played, yes, do please let me know. So, I mean, really more than anything, it's good for my end on the cleanup side, making sure that we don't have too many unplayed matches, but it's also good for players, when they log into Tennis Link, they will see a new date and a new time and, what location it is in. So there's no confusion as to who goes where. Just a question farther up that I think we missed. If Ellen, in a municipality that requires indoor masking, should that be applied regardless of club policy? Presumably, if the municipality requires indoor masking for playing tennis, the club should be abiding by that. So I cannot imagine there would be a violation of something like that. So there's indoor masking for general sort of common areas, and there's indoor masking, which is different for an actual tennis match, which,
Susanna, yeah. Susanna, I'm not talking about, municipality probably not making that decision about indoor tennis, but certainly any store like our municipality, any store you go in, any restaurant you go in, regardless of vaccination status, you're masked. Mm-hmm. As we were in serious heavy duty COVID time, correct? And that's when clubs went to it. But it seems to me that there's a little disconnect on that now. And I guess we'll see, right?
Yeah, I mean, the clubs that I've been to are requiring it in the common area. So not on the courts, but they're in common areas, which seems to be in line with what they're doing in shops and restaurants. Is that not your experience?
Well, it seems like all shopping, you go into your gas station, you go into your supermarket, it's not just common area. I mean, you're masked, right? I mean, you're masked. So it seems to me it's the Delta variant is more contagious. And if you're not going to ask for vaccination status, I know there's nothing you guys can do about it. I just find it interesting. I'm wondering if indoor volley, it seems to me last year, the CIAC really delivered on that, right? Because indoor sports were being played at that time. So in the fall, only indoor volleyball, I think, right, is the only indoor high school sport right now. And I don't know what the policy is on that. But
in our municipality,
but maybe somebody else knows.
In New Haven County, they're not required in the outlining areas. I'm from Guilford Racket, and we are not requiring masks in our lobby as of yet. And we were one of the first to require masks.
Yeah, fair enough. It'll be interesting, right? I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. So yeah, so on the question on a reschedule, if you're moving a match, an entire match, yes, please let me know and copy your opposing captain. If it's just 1 or 2 courts out of the 4 or 5 that of the total courts, you don't need to tell me. Again, stay tuned as we hear more, hopefully, it is certainly more contagious and we're watching it as we're watching the numbers. Really, I'm watching the numbers on a daily basis. And, to the extent there's anything that really applies to league matches, the clubs, we will communicate as we hear, but seems to be business as usual on the courts. So we're certainly happy to hear that. One of the last topics on our agenda is regulation. So there is one new regulation and just general sportsmanship items that Andrew wanted to cover. So if you would just stay tuned for that and Andrew can cover that, that'd be great.
Sure, happy to. Hi, everyone. First of all, briefly, just wanted to tell you, my subcommittee used to cover just Southern Connecticut. After John took over the Connecticut League Committee, of which I'm now a member, we changed the structure slightly, and the regulations subcommittee, which comes directly under the League Committee, now covers Southern Connecticut, Eastern Connecticut, and Northern Connecticut. This is good because it gives us a very standard approach to things like the administration of grievances, and hopefully going forward, a standardization of some of the rules. Just touching on grievances very briefly, I'm pleased to say they haven't been too high the last couple of seasons. We still get quite a few grievances, which at the end of the day come down to a he said, she said. So all I would say is anyone is entitled, of course, to file a grievance, but please consider what you're filing the grievance about, and whether it's one that a committee is going to really be able to make a decision on. If it's just a he said, she said, we really have to go back at the end of the day and say it's not something that we can make a good call on. But on the whole, I'm pleased to say they haven't been too bad. The one thing that still comes up in grievances is match ending procedures. And this very often occurs, particularly for teams that play in both Eastern Connecticut and Southern Connecticut leagues. We are thinking about how in the future we can standardize a match ending procedure, but at the moment they are different. So if you're a Southern Connecticut team playing in Eastern Connecticut, you use their procedure, and vice versa. Eastern Connecticut team playing in a Southern Connecticut league, you use ours. And as Susanna said, it is clearly on the back of that easy reference sheet. There's a flow chart on the match ending procedure, but we do get grievances arise because people use the wrong structure. And in one particular match, we had to alter the match result because of that. As regards regulations, there's only one real change to Southern Connecticut regulations this year, and it only affects tri-level. This was as a result of a rule change proposal from a captain and was voted overwhelmingly by tri-level captains in favor of. And basically what it's going to say is that any one level, so if you've got, say, a 3-0, 3-5, 4-0 tri-level, for the 4-0 court, one of the two players must be at level. So one must be a 4-0 player, while the other one can be a 3-5 playing up. That was just to keep the quality of play and was overwhelmingly supported by the tri-level captains. So that is now in the rules. If there are proposals for any changes going forward, and at this stage they would have to be for 2023, there is on the Southern Connecticut website a rule change proposal form that has to be submitted by May the 1st each year. So we've got plenty of time to research it, consider opinions on it, maybe take a vote and put it through to the Connecticut League. So just bear that in mind. If there is a rule you're thinking about, at this stage, you've got until May the 1st next year, and it would apply for 2023. So only that one real rule change. I always like to just mention a couple of the topics that come across our desk, as it were. In other words, what are the things that get mentioned to us? And the flavor of the month at the moment seems to be foot faults on serves. Now, we all know players shouldn't be foot faulting, but we all know that it happens. But when you look at the friend of court, the ability of a receiving side to actually call a foot fault and take a point has to satisfy a number of criteria. The server has to have been warned beforehand that they're foot faulting. You have to try and get an official on the court, which we all know is next to impossible for our local matches. And the foot fault has to be very visible and flagrant. I think what it really means in practical terms, in coming down to it, is that you shouldn't be, putting your hand up every time you think you see a foot fault on the receiving side. It is difficult to see. I have one of my players who, his serve style, he raises his front foot as he serves, and then his foot comes down in the court, and people are always saying, this guy foot faults a lot. But if you really look at him, his foot doesn't actually touch the court until after he's struck the ball. That is not a foot fault. If he struck the ball first, that is not a foot fault. So it is difficult to see that from the receiving side. So as much as possible, I would say, and try and pass this on to your team, if somebody on the other side is foot faulting, maybe leave it to the end of the game and say, look, for next time, we really are observing, we think you're foot faulting, you might just want to correct that. If it has continued throughout the match, you can mention it to the captain at the end. But that's probably the way to handle it, not to make a huge issue of it. The underlying thing is that nearly every pro and coach will tell you that in the amateur game, a foot fault doesn't give a great advantage to the server, not in the amateur game. So all would say, I'm not saying that servers should be allowed to foot fault. They shouldn't. They should get it right. But it's probably one that we just need to dial down a little. Are there any comments on that one before I move on?
Not on that specific one, but there's a comment that refers to acceptable reasons to postpone a match or reschedule any of the lines. And I know it's mentioned in our regulations, but if you wouldn't mind kind of mentioning that now or later, Andrew.
Yeah, sure. Let me just carry on and let's pick that one up at the end, Susanna, shall we? Thank you. Another one that we've had some comments on, and it only applies at certain clubs, and I'll admit that I experienced it directly myself playing a match. There are a couple of clubs, Chelsea Piers is one, Tennis Central is another, where there's spectator seating immediately behind the courts with only mesh separating the spectators from the players. So you might actually only be as little as 5 or 6 feet from the spectators. And okay, we all like to support our teams, but we've had instances, and I was faced with an instance where there was fairly loud applause for every point that our opponents won, even if it was one off an unforced error that we made. And it was very distracting. So I think we would ask all captains to just be aware of that. You shouldn't be in a position where we're distracting the players, and we're not pros. Pros expect to receive applause. We generally don't, probably on the whole. So applause after every point can just be a little off-putting and distracting. So you just, out of courtesy and sportsmanship, please bear that in mind. And really, the best rule is that if you're somewhere, if you're not behind glass or something like that, if you're where the players can easily hear it, keep it till the end of the match. That's the best time to have your applause. Yeah, Susanna mentioned using the easy reference chart. Your club, Susanna, I think, had them laminated, which Staples will do. I did something slightly different. I got Staples to print it on card instead of paper. And that works very well as well. Try and give them to every player. They only work out about 25 cents each, and it just fits in a tennis bag. We designed it so that unlike the 9 pages of rules and regulations, most of which don't apply to your actual play on court, this does. It covers, in addition to the things that Susanna mentioned, what happens if somebody's cell phone goes off? It's covered there. So it's a very useful document. On the back, it has the easy reference chart. On the front, it has some good tips for captains on organizing matches. And that gives me a good segue to really plead with captains to get on top of your matches ahead of time. Try and make sure that a week at least ahead, you know your availability, because we tend to find that one of the things that is disrupting matches the most is either not knowing the team's availability or the captains not communicating with each other. The home team, you are the hosts for a match. So please, maybe a week before, reach out to the opposing captain and confirm the match. And if both do that, I think we'll have less fall throughs. I think somebody was just trying to make a comment there. I'll pause.
Nicole, That document he's talking about is the same link that Christy pasted at the top of the chat. So if you click on that link, thanks.
And the front page does have some very good tips for captains in you know, what makes it easy to do the captain job and to get the matches organized. The other thing that I just wanted to mention, obviously, as we've moved more and more, everyone has a cell phone nowadays. And we've had instances, the rules basically say that there should be a simultaneous exchange of lineups. We've had situations where two captains arrive, each one's waving a cell phone. So I've got my lineup here. Who gives it first? Because the other team could conceivably change their lineup or read out a different one depending on who they're facing. We would encourage people, please use the match sheet in TennisLink and arrive with that written down so that you can actually exchange a physical lineup with the other team. And again, it eliminates any feeling over that at the time. I think that's really all I had to say on items that come up. Generally, things seem to be running fairly smoothly. Susanna, remind me, you were saying what are valid reasons for postponing a match?
Right. So what are some of the valid reasons? And correct me if I'm wrong, just the regulations call for a minimum of 3 days if it's for less than the majority of courts, and a minimum of 2 weeks if it's more than half the courts that you're looking to reschedule, for you to be getting in touch with your opposing captain and asking them to reschedule. So 3 days, 2 weeks. And again, just to fuck the, presumably, extend each other the courtesy. And if it's, stuff happens, people have smaller rosters, maybe there are holidays, people are getting sick, we get it. But sometimes these just don't work, right? And so what are not valid reasons, right? And Andrew supplemented.
I think that's a good way to put it. What are not valid reasons? Because again, I come back to this question of finding out your availability of people well ahead. Quite a bit of the time that we get captains asking to reschedule, it happens because possibly they haven't checked the availability far enough ahead, and it could have been headed off had they done so. So please get on top of this. A valid reason for rescheduling does not include the availability of certain players. In other words, I'd like to have John Smith on singles one, but he's got something on that day, so I need to reschedule that court. No, the availability of a particular player or players isn't a good reason to reschedule. What you need to do, of course, under the rule, we had a small change 2 years ago now, and that was following a season where we had a lot of rescheduled matches. If you play the majority of courts, so say 3 out of 5 on the day, if needs be, try not to, but if needs be, you can request the rescheduling of 1 or 2 other courts. If you're not playing the majority, you're going to end up taking a penalty. And that penalty is you can only reschedule the courts to win. In other words, you'll end up playing 3 out of, if you only play 2 courts on the day, you can only reschedule a further 1, which means you'll play 3 out of 5 and default 2. Most of the time you shouldn't be in that position because again, if you've got a reasonable roster and you're planning ahead, it doesn't often occur that teams are in that position. Obviously, weather related is a different issue. We've just got to use our common sense there. And ultimately, if people can't agree whether a match should have been postponed because of snow or because school was out or something like that, then the league will become the final arbiter on that. Do you think that addresses the question, Susanna?
I think so. Yeah, so, right, so as Andrew mentioned, so saying my D1 is not available, put somebody else in D1. We're pretty lucky in Southern Connecticut that we have pretty sizable rosters. And I think, with enough planning, there's really no reason why we can't get somebody else to play, or if we can't, if it's a holiday week or whatever, have enough advance notice to move a 1 court that is, weren't able to play. So, nobody's going to be difficult to you if you go up to them 2 weeks ahead of time, 3 weeks ahead of time and say, hey, listen, do you mind if we move one court? But it's not meant for you to, give you an advantage. It's really up to the accommodating party. If it doesn't work for them, it doesn't work for them. So, you can't put them in a position where they're the bad guy for saying no. So hopefully
That happens all the time, Susanna.
Yeah.
All I can say is we worded the ruling very carefully. It actually says that if people are looking to reschedule, sorry, let me reset. If people can't play the majority of courts on the day, they may only request to reschedule the courts to win. In other words, you're not even supposed to ask the other captain. It's not at that other captain's discretion to say, oh yeah, I'll waive the rule for you. That's the idea is the rule is in place and must be enforced. So I think that's got to be the answer to them, Maria. I know it seems difficult at times, particularly if you know people well, but you've just got to say, I'm sorry, you have to stick to the rule. And the trouble is, otherwise what happens is you're accommodating and then another team isn't. And of course you feel very hurt. The fact is the rules are there. If we all stick to them, then we're all operating on the same, from the same baseline. Okay, other than that, I can answer any question on rules. If it's not today, I can be contacted. Yeah, my email's out there, or just contact Susanna and she'll forward it on. If you've got any questions on rules, we're always happy to look at them. And if it's a dispute, for instance, that falls short of a grievance and you just want to know a ruling on it, if it's easy, I'll answer it. If we need to, I'll consult with the subcommittee and we'll give you a wider view.
Let me just add one last comment. There's one last comment from Craig. Is it valid to ask to postpone a singles if you theoretically have enough players, but you don't have a player who's realistically fit for singles? I mean, we understand it's a real, it's a real captain, real team dynamic constraint. But, the way we look at this is when you sign up for a team, you don't sign up as a singles player. You don't sign up as a doubles player. You're on the roster, very often captains end up playing, taking it for the team and playing. It should not be, to the detriment of the other team that, the right players aren't available at the right time. It's really no different than if I don't have my best players available, right? I mean.
That's absolutely right, Susanna. I've stood in for a singles and I'm really too old to be playing singles. So, you have to do what you have to do. Okay, if there are no more questions for now, I'll close my bit and pass it back to Susanna.
Thank you.
Can I jump in real quick? I'd like to add something. When Andrew was talking about the regulation change proposals, I want you guys to also remember you can do regulation change proposals for the section and for championships as well. They just need to be in by May 1st. So if there's anything about championships with the regulations that you think could really benefit and help with the player experience or with our section regulations, please fill out one of the regulation proposal forms for the section. Everything goes to committee, so everything gets looked at and really take into account that you guys are the ones on the ground doing this. So we want to hear from you if you really do have a regulation change that you think would be beneficial.
Actually, just one more comment on that. I guess John Pagano felt I wasn't putting in enough committee time. So he's just nominated me for the championship committee. So I'm now the Connecticut representative on that. So you're also welcome, if there are comments for championships, you're welcome to send me them. And I will be involved in that committee going forward. So we'll be able to express your concerns.
Said Andrew, if you want something done, give it to a busy person.
Thanks, John.
All right. So I don't think I see any more questions. I think we covered everything we wanted to cover. Again, I think everybody here knows my email, Andrew's email. Everybody's emails are on the agenda if you need to reach out to somebody separately on this. But I think we're off to a really strong start. Again, you have about another week. If you're interested in having a 40 and over team for men and women or women, We're a mixed 18 and over team, so we've got another week, and we have a pretty nice, healthy turnout. I'm seeing captain names I haven't seen in a couple of years, seeing some new names. So if any of you who are new captains who don't really know what to do, who are new at this, let me know. I'm happy to, help out along the way to kind of get you going until you are more comfortable doing this on your own. So thank you for that. And that's all we got. All right, I think we can wrap it up, Christy. So if you want to stop the recording, and we'll circulate this to everybody once the recording is complete for future viewing, if you have any co-captains who couldn't be here today.
All right, very good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.